Oh wait, we're on now.
And no, you were just mimicking the topic of today, which is a fly trap. And you have to have a fly to fly into the trap. You have to have the strange. I was talking about the fly trap I had where the flies were so dumb that they were literally breeding inside the trap. And so I was like, geez, they're not even giving themselves a chance. And so um, that's kind of what, if you really look into it, and we're not going to get into it today, maybe another time, but the way our financial system works, it's kind of a bunch of flies in a trap. And it really has to do with the value of the money. Like if you there's that have you seen that graphic that's gone around where it shows like the dollar bill, it's and then it's decreasing since like 1913, since the Federal Reserve, and the value of the dollar has decreased like 96% or something like that.
Yeah, and I think you and I had that discussion a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
and I think we probably even brought it up on one of these. That's as we kind of go along through this military finance 2.0 stuff, um, and we get to the portion where we start talking about growing assets and stuff like that. That's absolutely one of the things that we look at on there because, um, yeah, like you said, the 96% over the last 100 years. People say, well, what does that even mean? Basically it means, you know, uh, a dollar back in 1913 has the same purchasing power as 4 cents. Uh, it would basically, a dollar today would buy the same thing as 4 cents back in 1913. That's what I was trying to get at. Sorry.
Right.
Um,
And that just means, and that's the whole point of investing. See, investing was never a thing when the values of the currencies stayed relatively flat. People got the value of the thing that they produced. And as the industrial age came about, then there was investments. Okay, cool, I found the graphic. Hold on, I'm gonna share my screen.
yeah.
um, I was like, this has got to be on Twitter somewhere.
Does it show like the previous 100 years before 1913 what inflation was like? I know, there's a lot of factors that have contributed to it because we have more of a kind of a global economy now, but
um just looking at the chart. It just shows some examples of where things were at the given time, but still a powerful image.
yeah. Well, I think it's probably about to get worse too because you look at the fact that what did the national deficit grew by basically 33% over the last few years. Um, I mean that's insane, and we just created what, like $6 or $7 trillion out of thin air. I mean that's, if you study economics, you know that as supply increases, demand decreases.
Yeah,
Um,
well, they say what did you say? The 40% of all the dollars that have been created in the history of the U.S. economy were created in like the last year.
yeah, I mean that's
All
it's
the money in circulation,
yeah.
or
I mean,
perceived circulation.
yeah, a lot of that. I mean, we could sit here and dive into the gold standard and all of that, but I think that would probably take us off track from kind of the focus of today's discussion. We're going to talk about
Well,
the time.
right, but as these topics come up, let's take note and make sure we do shows on them in the future.
Yeah,
Because that's kind of the point is, yeah, we want to teach the basics, but we also want to teach some of the stuff that's kind of behind the scenes for some strange reason. I never That's why I never understood this stuff, like, oh, how money's a fiat currency and how they just print it. Like, why isn't that understood more often in our community? So I like doing that too.
Yeah, I have a few articles that I've written. I don't know if I've published any of them yet, but I have them there on my computer, like talking about inflation and what it does to, you know, any kind of investment you have or any money that you have, and how it's not necessarily a great thing. But yeah, I think inflation does tie into something else that we are going to discuss today, which is the time value of money, right? Because then that's what inflation is really tied to is time. Over the last 100+ years, the the value of the dollar has decreased by 96%. That's insane. So the best way to make sure that the money that you have now is going to have the same or more buying power 20 or 30 years down the road, however far away, retirement is. And it's not just then, it's okay, what about all the time in between, right? Because I don't like hearing, the traditional financial advice of like, well, you need a comprehensive plan to make sure that you're prepared for retirement. I get it. Yeah, they want you to take advantage of the time that you have between now and then to have that income, but there's a lot of life and opportunities in between then to take advantage of. And to me, I look at that as like, when I'm 75 or 80 and on my deathbed, do I want to be like, man, I sure am glad I'm laying here on my deathbed with $3 million in my bank account and I didn't really do a whole lot in between then. No, I don't like, you can't take it with you. I'm not saying don't be prepared, but at the same time, like, understand there's a lot. I mean, I'm 40. I'm going to be 41 years old next week. I'm not planning on retiring for quite some time if I ever retire. So to me, I look at it as like, how do I use this stuff to create opportunities for myself to have income to support the life that I want to live?
Yeah, you can do like Tim Ferriss does, mini retirements. I love that concept because I was like, that's what I like to do is just, you know, take as much time as I want to go do something different for a while. So I've been taking no time doing anything like that, so I can focus on building the business, so I can do that someday. That's all part of the plan.
I'm gonna start calling it that. I'm gonna be like, hey Scott, I'm gonna be retired for the next 2 weeks.
Why not? I mean, that's the whole point of being an independent in some capacity. Like, who cares when, how you're employed, how long that employment is, if it's a contract, I mean, where you're at. Um, the more mobility and flexibility you have in your schedule and your time, your location, the more value of any money is, because you're not tied necessarily to one economy, and that economy is much more broad than it typically would be. Your economy, and it used to be go to work in a small town, and you spend everything there, all your time was there, everything was there, your whole network. But now it doesn't have to be that way.
Yep, Walmart, destroyer of small businesses.
No,
I
no, Amazon, really. I mean,
well, yeah,
but Amazon was a creator. A lot of people don't realize a lot of things you buy on Amazon are from people who create stores, and they're selling it on Amazon. You're just buying it through the media. It's basically, buying stuff off the shelf at Walmart. Somebody created the product.
actually, I think in my hometown, and this probably happened in a lot of other small towns across the U.S. The malls are what really killed because I looked at pictures of my hometown, Fairmont, West Virginia, back in the 50s, 60s. Everything was in town. All the stores, restaurants, stuff like it was all in town. And then I think in like the 70s, the mall there, Middletown Mall, was built and everything moved to the mall. So they had like Sears and, JC Penney, all the big retailers moved to the mall. A lot of those stores, department stores and stuff left downtown and went to the mall.
I feel like all the
And
malls are called Middleton Mall, but
Yeah.
But you know what's happening to malls now, right?
Yeah, they're all well. I mean, all the malls. Look at MacArthur Center in downtown Norfolk, right? When I moved down here in 1999, that was like unveiled as like the new jewel of downtown Norfolk, right? It was a night. It was an awesome 3-story mall and had tons of stores. Had all the
Movie theaters. Because
yeah movie
who's
theaters,
gonna go to a movie theater anymore?
Rainforest Cafe, like all that stuff. Now it's
Oh,
that place
I
is a
remember
ghost
Rainforest.
town.
Well, no, but what's actually happening is a lot of these malls that are completely abandoned are being bought up by Amazon
Yeah,
for warehouse fulfillment centers. I mean, perfect. I mean, it's like they played their game. I mean, you know, he's been scheming this out for decades. That's the time value of money.
mm-hmm.
To know you're going to just completely disrupt all the systems. I mean, Amazon Air, I just read an article, has 77 airplanes now. Like they don't
That's
need
not bad.
they don't need Fed. I mean, they're not going to need FedEx, and I mean, I see so many Amazon trucks on my street.
Yeah,
It is nuts. I mean,
I
they're gonna
just
take over like the entire economy. Like that's their goal. Is like everything will go through Amazon.
well, you know, they're building that huge distribution center out here in Suffolk where I live. And I drove by there one day. My God, dude, that thing is massive. I mean, it is. You know, the last time I drove by and looked at the building, and I was like, "That thing is massive." I think it was the Pentagon.
Well,
Um,
they say, hey, the only way if you're worried about that taking over your life and taking over control, it's like, hey, buy locally and stuff. It's like, yeah, but it's easier. And I mean, look, I can get these books. We get these books printed. You know how many people have we've sent books to that have taken the time to read it and have come back to us and said, hey, tell me more. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, good.
yeah,
I'm glad I'm sending the books around. So
I've actually got a batch of them. I'm about to mail out to some
yeah,
people
yeah.
right now.
So
So
definitely, if for folks that are interested in the books, they're up on Amazon. You can get the print or Kindle version, of course, but you can also get it on our website for the PDF for free. So, but if you do want the printed, that's the best way to get it. Unless you happen to know Trevor or I directly, we can get probably one to you free of charge.
yeah. Well, okay. Since we got into that time value of money, we kind of see like how Amazon is taking advantage of that, but really on a more personal level, like how does that apply to the individual? And this kind of ties into, we did the carryover because really this kind of ties into what we talked about last time, the efficiency of your dollars, right? Do I invest or so that's kind of the question that a lot of people ask is like, hey, should I wait until I have all my stuff paid off before I start investing and creating wealth? And if you go talk to the talk show hosts and the authors, they're going to say, no, debt is the devil. Go take care of all of that first, be debt free, and then start. And really, that's because I look at the math of it, right? And I've even heard some of them say, like on their YouTube videos, like I heard a Dave Ramsey video where he's like, when I tell somebody this, the mathematical side of my brain just drives me insane. But I know that's what somebody's more likely to do. And I'm like, well, maybe they're more likely to do that stuff because they don't really know. They don't have the knowledge. They don't know how money works. Right. So to me, I'm like, no, you should not wait until you pay your house off or try to pay your car off early to start investing. Right. Pay yourself first from an efficiency standpoint, right? It does not make sense to pay something off and then have that money go work for you afterwards, especially cars. That's the one that, like we talked about last week. Why am I going to pay cash for a depreciating asset? Right? That's just like saying I'm going to go pay, $30,000 for this car. And, maybe instead of that, like I'm just going to take $30,000 out in the backyard and burn 20,000 of it. That's basically what you're doing.
Yeah,
Um,
or my mom called me yesterday to say she picked up her tax return and she owed some money in taxes, and I think
I lost you.
I dropped off.
Yeah, you did.
No, but I hit the back button by accident. But anyways, my mom called me yesterday and um, says, "Hey, she owes money," and I was like, "Oh no, she's gonna ask like why I did wrong." She didn't say that. She just said, "Hey, which account should I pay it from?" And so I was like, "Cool." She's been trained that it's actually better to pay at the end of the year versus a return.
Yeah, no, my dad's the same way. He's like, I hate getting a tax return, and in my opinion, you should hate getting a tax
I
return
mean, you should
because,
hate paying at the end of the year too, but that's another story.
yeah, I guess the big thing is just
In
making,
the fixed income system.
yeah, and that's it goes back to the whole mindset thing, right? I've talked to so many people that they're just afraid of using that money to work for them because they haven't done it yet. They don't understand. It's like think about the first time you ever jumped into the deep end of the pool. You didn't know what was going to happen. You were scared beyond belief, and then you jumped in and you were like, "Oh, okay, this isn't so bad." So people just have that irrational fear, and they're like, "Well, I want to stay in my nice warm bundle. I want to stay in this big bag of other flies and get my tax return every year because that makes me feel comfortable." Okay, that's fine, but you're
Feels
never.
like a win. It feels
Yeah,
like I mean, gosh, the way it's set up. Oh, we'll give you a return, some of your money back. It's like, oh, it's like
here you go, buddy.
yeah.
Here's your stimulus.
This is
But
you know, we're giving your money back to you. And so that's how easy it is to trick people a little bit and to thinking about where they fit in.
part of that problem is people don't make that parallel. They don't see it between like, hey, how I feel and the reality of the situation are oftentimes completely different things. And that's what they do. They say, well, I feel like I should do this. And when you sit there and ask them, you can ask them 2 or 3 questions and get them to the point where they say like, oh, okay, maybe the way that I feel isn't isn't actually the reality of the situation. And so, it's just one of those habits that you have to get people to understand like it's not the best way. It's a way to
Well,
do it, but it's not the best way.
and I don't think there is a getting people to understand. What we're more trying to do is just making sure that all of those who are willing to understand know about it. But
Yeah.
there is no convincing of everybody.
Yeah, I mean, some people they're never going to um, they're never going to come around, and I don't know what to do. Yeah, you can't you can't save everybody, right? So, um, but in the meantime, I just try to put the knowledge out there, and hopefully, people will take that on board and start to learn from it and ultimately be successful because of that. So, I think with this, we were talking about time value of money, right? We bring this up because in the end, like time is absolutely the greatest accumulator of wealth. Anybody who, studies finance or anything like that understands like time plus compound interest equals, growth. And if you're waiting to take advantage of that, you're not, the longer you wait, the less you're going to have it, whatever your goal is, whether it's like, hey, I want to have this much money by the time I'm 35, or I want to have a certain amount of money when I'm getting out of the military because I want to go start my own business. The longer you wait, and I know this from personal experience, the worse off you're going to be, right? I was that guy. Like, if I could do one thing, like, say if you go back in time and tell yourself one thing, what would you do? That would be the thing that I would say, hey, go back, take advantage of all those times you deployed and came back, and re-enlistment bonuses, and came back from deployment with a bunch of money. Don't pay your car off. Don't, go out and buy new guns or whatever other cool thing that you want. Like, start paying yourself and 20 years from now, you're going to thank me. It's not going to happen. So the best I can do now is just learn from my mistakes moving forward.
Yeah, right on. I mean, the things I wish I would have. I mean, even if it wasn't just, had I put my money into an account and assuming I would have gotten 8% compounded, sure it would have doubled or tripled or whatever the time value money equation is. But at the same time, I think about the time I wasted, or just the actual value of my time that I didn't spend learning how to create money, which is essentially, business. That was the whole point of Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was, put your money to work, figure out how to, in most cases, real estate. Gosh, there were a lot of people who started in their 20s. You did started doing real estate investment in their 20s. That I happened to be overseas. That wasn't a good fit for me, but it was still the internet age. Like, I had an opportunity to put my time and my investment into learning how to do Facebook, because the opera singer I was dating at the time, she needed to promote her business, her singing career, but she wouldn't let me use Facebook. And I remember being annoyed that I didn't think we were getting a good return on investment, or I thought we could have. And that was, in the early days. Imagine how I had actually learned that. That would have been quite valuable.
Actually, I didn't start in my 20s. I started in my late 30s.
Oh, okay.
Had I started in my
Right.
20s,
But a lot of people, I mean, a lot of people do, and some people start these. It's not about starting a business and becoming a millionaire overnight with some website, but you do hear about people, just like you buy an investment property and get somebody paying you rent. Um, you can create a website on a topic and eventually, start getting paid rent. I mean, in the form of advertisement, um, to make some money. And people do that all the time. And that's just, one example. So,
well, one thing I was going to like, as we're kind of talking about this, I wanted to bring that slide up, the house one. Do you have that? Because that was the other one. We did the car one last time. I wanted to bring the house one up because this is a very common misnomer that a lot of people have, right? So if you're looking at this is something I created, and basically this is my own personal scenario, right? So my wife and I bought our house. Um, we financed it at, I think it's 420,000 at 3.5% simple interest, simple math interest, not compound interest. So the thing about a house that's different than a car, it actually appreciates in value, hopefully, unless there's a real estate bubble, which I experienced that too with the house with another house that I had owned, right? So you're paying your principal, your interest, your taxes, your insurance on that. One thing about that too, while you're paying that mortgage, having that interest, that's a tax deduction for you. So that throughout the year, as you're doing your taxes, that's something that helps you out. I will say this: under the current tax law, if the amount that you have financed is more than 750,000, you're not going to be able to deduct all of that interest from your account, from your taxes. But as I'm paying into this thing, the real estate market's growing at probably at a rate of 2 to 3% per year, so it's increasing in value. But so what I looked at, right, $420,000, 3.5% for 30 years. Just the principal and interest on that was about $1,885 a month. That means over the course of that 30 years, I would have paid $678,000 into this house. $258,000 of that would be interest. What I said was, hey, you know what? Because I went to business school. I had a spreadsheet where I could do the amortization of the loan, and I said, hey, what if we start throwing $500 a month towards the principal of this? And I kind of ran the numbers on it, and I said, okay, now we're only going to pay $170,000 in interest, right? So it's going to save us about $88,000 on this loan, and it's going to shave about 10 years off of the life of this mortgage. And I thought that was really smart until somebody came at me with, okay, hey, this is another business term of, hey, what's the opportunity cost of your decision? If you're not familiar with opportunity costs, it's basically the opportunity that you had you chosen to do something else instead of what you did do, right? So I was like, okay, well, let me see here. I threw $500 a month away at 7%. I use 7% because if you look at the historical average, the S&P 500, it's about 8%. So I tried to be a little conservative there. For 30 years, that would have given me $610,000, right? That's just assuming, steady growth. Obviously, we know it's not steady. The market goes up and down all the time. But, that would have made me a pretty significant amount of money right there, a lot more than I would have saved in interest. So had I paid the house off in 20 years, I'd say, okay, well, now that I paid my house off, I can take all that money I was putting towards principal and interest and, throw that into the investing along with that $500 a month. Now I'm paying into this for 10 years, but that's about $200,000 less that I would have had. For a lot of people, that's not a small amount of money.
No, those are real dollars. And really what this is giving you is like, even if you didn't come out $200,000 ahead, the extra flexibility that you get over all these years to make different decisions and not just to be tied into one strategy. This is really a different way of explaining the similar benefits we get from our version of the Survivor Liberty Plan, our version of the SBP or Survivor Benefit Plan alternative, because it's like, all right, you're paying these payments like a mortgage anyways. Some of them go for the cost of doing business, the interest, and some come back in benefit. In the mortgage, it's living in a house, and in the SBP case, it's a benefit in the event that the veteran passes away first, and that's the only benefit. Whereas in our strategy, much like this, you can get a lot more return on investment, all throughout the scenario, not just the one version.
Yeah, and doing it this way, like investing that for you instead of giving the bank their money back sooner, because they're going to say, oh, this guy is paying us extra money every month. We're going to use that to go out and make more money. That's what the bank is doing with the extra money that you're paying. Like, so either you can put it to work for you or you can give it to the bank so they can put it to work for them. But, there's another scenario that is in the textbooks of anybody that goes any kind of like financial advisory curriculum. One a class that I had a while ago where they show an example of a guy who just goes and throw in an arbitrary amount, call it $1,000 a year, right? So if you have a guy who invests $1,000 a year for 10 years into an account, and then he lets it sit there and grow for however long, 30 years, right? And then you have another guy who waits 10 years to invest, and then he throws in $1,000 a year for 20 years. So at the end of this time frame, 30 years later, which guy do you think has more money? It's actually the guy, I know nobody can answer me, but it's actually the first guy who only invested $10,000 over 10 years. He's got almost twice as much as the guy who put away $1,000 a year for 20 years because he took advantage of that extra 10 years. By the time the second guy started investing, the first guy already had something like, I think it's like $17,000 or $18,000, right? If you've ever heard of the rule of 72, it basically says, if you want to figure out how much time it's going to take you to double your money, divide your interest rate, or divide 72 by your interest rate, and it'll tell you like it's going to take this many years to double your money. If you want to know what interest rate you need to double your money, subtract the amount of year, or divide 72 by the number of years that you have, and it'll tell you what kind of rate of return you need to do that. So if you do, like, I think I did 10% for that, right? At 10%, right? You divide 72 by 10%. That means every 7.2 years, it's going to double your money. But anyways, to get back on point, the second guy who threw away $1,000 a year for 20 years, it doesn't matter because he lost that extra 10 years. He could throw $1,000 a year for 80 years into that thing, and he's still never going to catch up to the first guy.
Yeah, no, it's powerful stuff because not just that, but also anybody that's saving earlier is at least thinking about, how money fits into their future and creating time for themselves to figure out what they want to be doing, because there's always another way to maybe start something that can create a lot of value at once.
And it's, from that mindset standpoint, or the behavior thing that all the gurus follow. My take on it is like, look, if you're willing to put this off for a day, you're also willing to put it off for a week or a month or a year or 10 years, right? If you don't have that mindset of I'm going to start taking care of myself right now, who knows when it's going to click for you. And the opportunity cost for you is you may miss out on 20 years of your life to start building or creating something that's going to make you ultimately a lot more successful in the long run.
No, exactly, and that's the unfortunate thing, given that we're in America in the internet age. There's so much opportunity, but if we are stuck just working for somebody else for our whole lives and never actually trying, then we'll never know. But cool. Well, awesome, man. Well, no, that's a great topic, and glad we got to add it to the curriculum. But for those that are joining us, make sure you are subscribing to the channel at US VetWealth. We're almost at 300, so that's pretty cool. And we got a bunch of books out there. We're redoing the website. Gonna have podcasts. Got Trevor's Get to Vet podcast out there. Anything you want to announce for that, Trevor?
No, we still have Herb Thompson's episode is for this week. He's the author of The Transition Mission. Awesome book. We got, I think next week we're going to have another guy, Richard Kaufman, who's an Army vet, has his own podcast, Vertical Momentum. I think that guy, he's I love him to death, man. He's just got a big heart. He loves talking to vets, and I was glad that we actually got him to come on the show because he's got a good story. And part of it, I almost started crying. That's like what he was talking about it. So,
oh boy, okay,
yeah, I just he's one of those guys that like you talk to him, you're like, I instantly liked him listening to him talk, and he's got a lot of love to share. And yeah, so that'll be coming out next week, and we release our episodes every Monday at 12 p.m.
Okay, cool. Well, you'll have to add a hashtag tearjerker or something.
Yeah. Yep. So
cool. Well, awesome, man. Well, no, congrats on the success with that. And yeah, for everybody else, we'll see you on a Friday at noon. Special announcement that day. I mean, well, change of
it's
scenery.
a special day.
Slightly. I don't know. We'll see.
So
We'll figure it out. But all right, we'll see you then.
Thanks.